Good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Parkinson, Director of Programming here at the Gloucester Writers Center. We would like everyone to know that we are a nonprofit organization which strives to connect readers and writers here on Cape Ann and in our broader North Shore community. Our programming is funded in large part by generous donations from that community, for which we are grateful, and our operations are made possible because our volunteers, who are generous with their time and talents, help us out with everything. If you or anyone you know is interested in donating time, effort, moolah, let us know. I am excited to welcome you here for tonight's reading, which features the poets Linda McCarriston and Kathleen Aguero. This evening, Kathleen will read first, and after which we will have a brief intermission, during which time we invite you to share in our snacks and drinks, and to use the restroom to stretch your legs a bit, and then Linda will finish out the evening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So let me introduce Kathleen Aguero. Kathleen Aguero has published many books of poetry, the latest of which I believe still is World Happiness Index. She is also co-editor of 3 literary anthologies focused on marginalized voices. She's taught at many institutions in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and beyond, and I believe this is true, currently teaches in the Solstice Low Residency MFA program. I'm nailing it. And in the Changing Lives Through Literature program. She has consistently been a poet of patient, humane attention. In poems that laugh and sing, Aguero never smirks. Instead, her work invites us to surprising sources of mirth and wonder. A self-portrait as a geranium, a dispatch from the 19th happiest country on earth, a strained relationship with her better self. And her work honors the effort to traverse human difficulty. In one poem about her father, the poet worries his children's voices fade to distant traffic and that their faces are vague moons in his sight. The bittersweet ending of this piece reminds us of how good it is that we cling to those we love, and through the engine of poetry, it helps prepare us for letting go. I've been out of my body, he tells us at lunch, as we attend to his labored breathing, keep trying to fix his feet on the ground. The body and the spirit are there, recorded in their temporary unity. Most of all, Aguero's poems invite us to revel in how the work of imagination enlivens the quality of our attention. It is profound attention, after all, which allows a speaker in one poem who has assembled books in which he never wrote a word to say, the purest language is possibility. The blank page contains it. Please join me in welcoming Kathleen Aguero.
Thank you, Eric, for that more than generous introduction. And thank you, Eric and Henry, for inviting me here, and Linda for inviting me to join her, and all of you for coming. There are some seats on the sofa here if anybody would like to do that. I always like to start my readings off with a poem by someone else to hopefully introduce us all to either familiar, hey there, or new poets. So this is a poem by Barbara Helfgott Hyatt from her 6th collection, Come Thunder, which was published by Lily Review Press. And it's an absolutely stunning book. I recommend it. To be happy. Can we always believe our own eyes? And why not? And mustn't we? For who are we if we do not? Obey yourself is the final lesson, though many of my teachers thought otherwise. Barbara, be quiet. Barbara, sit still. Barbara, do not tend to your neighbor. Janice will find a pencil for herself. Obey yourself, I'm thinking now that I've grown and life has had its way with me. Know thyself, a Greek said. Heal thyself, another. Go on and be bossy. Tell yourself what to do and do it. It's the first intention that's the hardest. Make life up, then force your eyes to see it. Look up, then bend to your task. Hard, harder, hardest, happy. And that's Barbara Helfgott Hyatt from Come Thunder. I'm going to sort of skip around a little bit and read from a couple of books in different orders, but this is a poem about my mother who died of Alzheimer's when she was 90. Leftovers. When you choose the napkin, mistaking it for an hors d'oeuvre, when she eats the tea bag that rests by the side of her cup, I want to be the one to gently take the plate away, to give her something tastier for lunch. The general, we called her, when she told us what time we'd leave for the beach, challenged the nuns who frightened her children, sold the house, packed the furniture, chose the paint for new walls, drove a rental car through the mountains of France. No, Ruthie, put this end to your ear, I hear my father tell her when I phone to say flights are canceled because of snow, so I won't be home for Christmas. It's a good thing you can't come, she tells me. It's terrible here. I've never seen anything like it. Inside our house, strangers are walking around in their coats. That night after dinner, my father will hand my mother plastic plates to dry as he wraps up the leftovers, puts the carving knife in its case. Over and over, she'll wipe the same dish. Where do you live? Do you have any children? This is my mother speaking to me in a room where her grandchildren's photos cover the walls. You look tall, she says, and your hair is so curly. You still don't comb it. I know who you are. I just wasn't expecting someone so young. I guess this would be considered, an ekphrastic poem. It was based on a painting called The Raising of Lazarus by Sebastian del Piombo, I think. And it begins with an epigraph from John chapter 11, verses 43 to 44. And when he had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave cloths. Last thing he knew, he'd lain down on his pallet, weak and parched. Then he was crawling through a tunnel. He couldn't remember why. Some mission he hadn't volunteered for? Now suddenly he's been yanked back to find himself in the bright sun and nearly naked. Villagers surround him, friends or foes. Adrenaline thaws his tingling fingers. There in the distance, water, fields, familiar bridge. Where exactly has he been? Lazarus can't form the sounds to tell what his eyes have seen, and no one wants to listen. Decay wafts from his robes. Nights he wakes shouting, face drenched in sweat, fist clenched. Hush, his sister whispers, you're home, safe now. I read 2 poems for my mother. I will read 2 for my father, who died at the ripe old age of 90. His answer. I lean forward, trying to keep up conversation as I watch my father make himself eat. At 96, he struggles to maintain his weight. 40 minutes for a tiny sandwich, a speck of salad, then cake, ice cream, whipped cream, chocolate sauce. I can't taste anything, he tells me, only desserts. The sweet taste buds are the last to go. He's still shipshape, my father, the marine engineer. Every morning he showers, shaves, dresses himself. I used to be handy, he says. I went around and fixed things for everyone. Now it takes 2 people to help me in and out of the car. I don't want to be bedridden. And what can I say, the mouthy child, who started this by asking what he looks forward to each day? Nothing, he shrugs. I've outlived myself. There are some seats over here, if anybody wants to rest on the couch. Okay. My father floating. My father floats in a fearful dream, rises outside his body, but he's stuck in the living room, which appears tilted at a surreal angle, ceiling fan coming out of a wall. Float somewhere nicer, my sister suggests. Havana, Athens, Cairo, places he visited as a younger man, extra pages stapled into his passport in accordion folds. Or maybe visit that East Hampton bungalow we used to rent before it became such a fashionable address. Help, help, he cries, arms flailing. Perched on a ledge about to go over, he can't find the floor, though he's upright, secure, and awake in his chair. The usual laws no longer apply. The structures that house him, the very habits themselves, relinquish their long service. Coaxing, demanding, our voices fade to distant traffic, our faces vague moons. I've been out of my body, he tells us at lunch as we attend to his labored breathing, keep trying to fix his feet on the ground. Let me see. From Daughter of. Companion. I wake, then grief fills me the way water fills the basin where I wash, or pours from the kettle into the cup. All day I'm carried by its current. I stretch toward those around me but cannot reach them. From inside grief's call I speak. I do everything I need to do, but my hands are clumsy in grief's gloves. Oh, grief, you are so patient and persistent. Every day you come, unwelcomed. You stand close. You wrap your arms around me. You whisper, don't worry, I won't leave. And I'd like to read some poems from my, well, kind of new book. It's not that new, but newest book, World Happiness Index. And as you may know, especially if you've ever heard me read these poems, so there's a group, and they pass around questionnaires and they rate them, and they rate all the countries as to how happy they are. And in 2019, the U.S. was number 19. We usually hover, a little bit above, a little bit below Mexico, close to Canada. The happiest one is always, I think, Finland, followed by Denmark, and then Norway, and Sweden juggle for third place. So if you're thinking of moving to another country, I would recommend those 3 Nordic places. The World Happiness Index 2019. How happy I am to live in the 19th happiest country in the world. Tulips rose this month through the arsenic soil, and the air I breathe is dark with money. In country 19, we can say what we want. A professor in California is allowed to say we elected a racist president, and those who disagree can leave phone messages threatening his 9-year-old daughter because we live free or die. Our children leave their houses each morning happy, not knowing what adventures the day holds. Might they be shot on the sidewalk by an officer who mistakes their cell phone for a gun, or by a stray bullet in the playground? Or will they get to school where they can hide in the closet from an active shooter? If they arrive home safely, there's always tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow their teachers will have guns. They are happy to be living in this just happy enough country where no one dares get sick for fear of bankruptcy. If you try in Happy Country 19, you too can be as rich as the sea. And if not, there are lots of street corners to live on and happy things to swallow or snort. And the fetid air from the subway grate will keep you warm at night if you knock someone else off it playing King of the Mountain. We have problems, of course, that we're trying to solve, but we're from the country of hard work and initiative, of take what you want and say it was yours all along. Numbers 1, 2, and 3, with their orderly lives, their health care and housing and good schools grow for free, grow soft and mushy. Not us. We're the ice inside a snowball. the rubber hose that leaves no mark. We dance on the head of uncertainty, cruelty's pin. Every morning our sun rises, red, white, and blue. Thank you. Unfortunately, there's still people out with guns shooting, making kids hide in closets all these years later. Fear Street. I lived on Main Street in a quiet city where citizens spoke kindly of those they didn't have to live with. But underneath every complacent surface is a set of fangs, sharp and growing sharper, hungry, irritable, insatiable. How suddenly it seemed to draw back its lips. I didn't see it coming. They said, that's because you didn't have to. It wasn't gnawing on you. How indignant I was on their behalf. How I loved my indignation. They rolled their eyes at my innocence, which was expensive and costing their lives. But I'd never hurt you, I said. We all live on Fear Street, they replied, but you couldn't read the sign. We're all being swallowed. Go ahead. If you don't believe us, walk into its maw. I sometimes think fear and someone being afraid of you are among the most dangerous things at this point. This is a poem for my grandson Emery when he was younger. At 16 months, brown and gold. My grandson plucks a marigold poking through a neighbor's white fence, crushes it between his fingers while I try to remember if it's poisonous. 3 days later, he's alive. So I crossed the marigold off my list of potentially lethal flora toddlers might put in their mouths. So far, he has not poked out his eye, falling while carrying a stick, something my mother assured me would happen if I ever ran with a stick in my hand. Though he tugs hard at the baby gate, he has not pulled it down. Though he has pounded on the window, he has not shattered it, cut himself, or fallen to the pavement 2 stories below. His skin has not turned from brown to blue during a tantrum, and he has grabbed the dog's whiskers without being bitten. He bulldozes his way. He prods and he pushes. He tries to put the whole of the dangerous world in his mouth while I follow, ready to snatch the worst away. When tired, he wobbles, he falls, he cries, but the next day he's walking again. Golden marigold petals stain his brown hand as he carries his stick. So far, no one thinks it's a gun. I have been writing some self-portrait poems, and I thought it was a novel idea. Then it turns out lots of poets write self-portrait poems, and I already knew lots of painters did. But most people don't like seagulls. You know, I do. I admire them. They are the pirates of the bird world. Really brash and bold. At Salem Willows, near where I live, I saw them take a whole box of chicken nuggets out of a toddler's hand. It wasn't nice. And also, my husband was having lunch with a friend who was gesticulating with his sandwich. Whoops. So they're bold. Self-portrait as seagull. Forget the jittery plover nesting in the sand, just asking for its eggs to be crushed by your careless foot, nervously darting away and deserting its young if you come near. Picture me on an inflatable lounger knocking ash from my cigar, gin and tonic handy. Trash-talking marauder, screeching with my gang in intertidal pools, I play chicken as you walk the shore. Snatch your lunch from its paper bag. Look for me in the parking lot behind the market where I street fight over clams, then strut, a piece of shell hanging from my beak. Let's see. Self-portrait as sunrise. Here I am, Can girl, high-kicking night out of the sky. Coral skirts, hot pink feather boa, arms draped across that electric navy horizon. Dazzle dance, quick flirt, fade, and gather my skirts into that spiked circle children paint in the corner of their pictures. That thing you think you know. And I wanted to read some newer poems to end with. Let me see. Alone at home. Each room a cave in your mind, a safe you can lock. No one else breathes its warm air. No other footfalls stir dust. At last you wear the garment of your own desires. At last you remove your crown of false smiles. Cover the mirrors, pull down the shades. Sometimes light within you flickers. Sometimes it dazzles and blinds. So I know that at least two of you, besides me in this room, are familiar with Colleen Michael's poetry in Improbable Places. And so this was written, we went to the Wenham Historical Museum, and so this was written about an object in that museum, a doll in there. And the story is that Reverend Hale, who was one of the big witch finders and condemners and torturers, changed his heart after his own wife, Sarah, was accused of witchcraft. And in this house, he met with Reverend Joseph Garrick to talk to the young teenager who had accused Sarah Hale of witchcraft. And she was not indicted or charged. And surprisingly, after that, he had a change of heart. And he wrote a modest inquiry into the nature of witchcraft, which basically said things got a little out of hand. So that's a kind of long introduction for a not very long poem. Doll in the bedroom. I am the one in the gray blanket lying in the splintered cradle at the foot of the bed. My bonnet is dusty, my face brown ash, my smile sewn in place. I've been here since Sarah Hale, accused of witchcraft, was cleared by the good judge, her husband. Sometimes I think I remember the children hanging me in her stead, then coffining me here for expiation. After closing time, I restless roam, just as you fear I might. The pretty dolls stay mute, stay still, eyes unblinking as I whisk by. Too big to fit in the French dollhouse with its warning, don't touch, its fancy carved furniture, tiny chandeliers. At night, I ride the circling train to nowhere, crying, all aboard. I don't know if I should have said this. Maybe this poem needs too much explanation for its length, but in that museum, they have a lot of, old dolls, lead soldiers, and millions of wonderful trains that go round and round, some around the ceiling. When I was a child, my favorite game was Clue. Yeah. Wasn't that great? I loved the little rooms and the little weapons and the little figures and the opportunities for cheating, because neither my brother or sister or I were good at slipping those clue cards into the envelope, so we were supposed to close our eyes, but I didn't. But of course, my favorite character was the glamorous Miss Scarlet. So I'd like to end with this poem. A clue. Miss Scarlet's in the kitchen wiping off the cleaver. Though Mrs. White lies dismembered on the floor, Miss Scarlet hums like a frenzy of bees, remembering nights singing jazz at the plaza, flirting with well-heeled patrons, and smoking between sets. That's how she wound up in John Body's drafty mansion, a suspect in his murder. Never trust a sugar daddy who wants you to dress like a maid and dust. Watch you play sous chef to his cook. But she's in charge of dinner now. What shall she serve tonight? Quail in Colonel Mustard sauce? More than once she's felt him press his waxy mustache on her neck. She's not the kind of cook to use a recipe, and she likes the kitchen to herself. Despite that shimmering page boy, that tight red dress, she'll play the 50s housewife. Plenty of knives left to sharpen. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I like that voice. I really do. And
So, folks, we usually have a little bit of an intermission between readers, but it seems to me like we have such a packed house that maybe it makes sense to plunge on and speak with each
Yeah.
other afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's good.
Good. So
And
let.
I just have to say that I love that last poem, and my son is going to a crew party tonight on Eastern Point, and he's dressed up as Colonel Mustard.
Oh, I won't hurt him. I promise.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know
Oh
it
no,
was very
it's great
prompted,
to tell.
so thank you.
I'm glad people are still playing that game.
So let me take a minute, please, to introduce Linda McCarriston. It seems to me, at least in contemporary poetry, that one can argue there is a class war, or one can ignore that great masses of people in this country are working class people, but only in a few instances can someone sing in the language of work and pain, abuse and persistence, with honesty and insight and the bodily knowledge of what a country like America or a city like Lynn is capable of putting a person through. There are two competing attitudes in our poetry which have everything to do with, I think, our limited imaginations. One attitude is order is too stifling and limiting and we must get free. The other is that chaos isn't the same as freedom, and it is admirable to desire and to work toward order, clarity, and understanding. Linda McCarriston's poems are poems that understand and organize our lives by, as she told Bill Moyers, saying what we don't want to know. Listen, for example, to a bit of the poem Riding Out at Evening, a poem which begins in the blur of dusk and moves toward greater clarity. You can hear the consistency of the logic which presents imperatives, let this, let that, and rebuts doubts about their moral underpinnings at once. Half aloud I say to the horse, or myself, or whoever, let fire not come to this house, nor that barn, nor lightning strike the cattle. Let dogs not gain the gravid doe. Let the lights of the rooms convey what they seem to. And who is to say it is useless or foolish to ride out in the falling light, alone, wishing or praying for particular good, to particular beings, on one small road in a huge world? This is poetry which creates what I'm tempted to call moral order, not through tyrannical force or Puritan imposition, but by doing the work of noticing what is and naming it out loud. Once it's named, we find we want the order the poet is looking for out here on this one small road, which, after all, we have to travel together. Please join me in welcoming Linda McCarriston.
Thank you so much for that really kind of unexpected and marvelous introduction. I really appreciate you writing that and doing the work of it. I had decided that I was not going to read the poems that are most well known of mine, which are the poems from this book, which was a finalist for the National Book Award. And they're poems of domestic violence that are in which the concentric circles of authority that surround and allow that kind of violence, in-house violence, to continue. And actually, when I was a child, I'm going to be 80 shortly.
Sorry.
I mean, it was perfectly legal to. It was perfectly legal, and a man's home was his castle, and that has changed, and it's changed in ways that have been good and bad for society. But that's a separate subject. I think the young men today are Anyway, you see how I can go off? Don't let me go off. In any case, this book I've read quite a bit, and there are a couple of poems in it that I'm going to read, but I'm not going to read those poems of domestic violence and grief and loss. I think the book is a love poem to my family, to all of them, that my father was free to be a criminal in his own house, and that we had to live with that. What he couldn't do next door, he could do in his own house. And he was, and he came from first generation Irish Catholic alcoholic, IRA, county down, being in World War II on a, destroyer escort. You have to understand his life. But he shouldn't have been able to be a criminal in his own house. But in any case, thank you for saying those things. I'm going to turn to one or two poems from here, but I thought I'd like to read around a little bit in other aspects of my life in poems that I have written and liked. And I apologize in advance for my voice, which I have just sort of gotten used to, gravel Gertie. I've gotten used to myself. And I actually went online and tried to find voice exercises, like this week. So I closed the windows and I was going, and I decided that what I would do is I would go to the doctor and have someone look at my vocal cords and see if, I have to take a lot of inhalers for emphysema. And it's the steroids and things in the inhalers that I think are the cause of the, gravel Gertie voice. But I've decided that I really should try harder to improve my voice. And I will go to a doctor. And
We'll check up.
Okay. But thank you for putting up with it. It is not pleasant. Let's see. I have various and sundry things here, and my order, of course, is left at home. I had to go back twice. Forgot my phone, forgot the list. The dogs were so happy twice. Oh, she's back. Oh, she's back. I had to drive across the front of the house and wave to them in the window where they wait, beep the horn twice. I did that 3 times tonight. Now, wait. This is supposed to be page 45. Oh, in this book. This is does anyone in this room know what the word tippet means as a noun?
Yeah.
Tippet? Yes. Yes.
Little shawl,
A little shawl. It's not really a shawl, but it's bigger than a collar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and women, particularly in 19th century or 20th century, women would wear these decoratively.
All us English majors.
I know, with all these words. I can't believe these words were buried in my head until I needed them, really. Okay. So this poem is called Tippet. And it's, thank you. And I'm going to find it before I begin. I should have 3 books here. Yeah.
This is mine.
Okay. I told you about my disorganization, and I'm sorry. I should whistle or something.
You want me to look in one book and you look in another?
I'm looking for the poem Tippet, as you know.
45.
Yes, but I don't know which book.
book?
And right. Page 45. And I thought it was an Eva Mary, but it's not.
I've got it.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. You get a second prize. You won both first prizes. Tippet. I've lived in rural areas for 30 years because I fulfilled a childhood dream at the age of 40 by getting a horse. And I had a pickup and I lived out in the boonies with people who live out in the boonies, and it was various places, but this was in Vermont. For better than a week, they've dragged it around among the 3 houses, the 5 dogs I walk with, the diminishing carcass of a deer. My 2 are the old ones who don't go off without me, who can't be running deer. So I look the other way until my red setter, Kate, Grand Dame bird dog, knobby with arthritis, presents what's left to the front lawn, framed by the big bay window. No more denying, so I plow out through a foot of snow to collar her, queen of the hearth's circle, gnawing away at the delicate face of a doe, the balance of which is a tippet of gray gold fur and a strand of flesh or a tendon to the left foreleg from the knee down, the hoof a glossy miniature, snow-packed, hard-packed from its running. Because I want them not to get, even late, a lust for the taste of it, I head for the covered rubbish with the creature in my arms, cradling its skull and bundle of frozen hide without thinking against my breast like a pet or a child. It hardly seems grotesque as I do it, to shift it up to my shoulder, just so, freeing one hand to lift the lid and slip it in. I surprise myself, starting to cry then, having no grave in the iron earth, no word to lessen the waste as I throw her away. For solace, I turn to my ignorance, human, encyclopedic, and say, a shared animal wisdom beyond me governed this chase. But my flesh, where her head rested, keeps faith with its rue. As I said, my childhood dream was a horse, and I realized it at the age of 40, and it made me very happy to realize it. This is called, I wrote this poem, Girl from Lynn Bathes Horse. And I didn't say anything about Lynn Bathes Horse, right? I thought, in those days I never thought anyone who was further away than 20 miles would ever read a poem of mine. So, but this is Girl from Lynn Bathes Horse, and it has my favorite line that I've written ever in it. If you get a special prize if you can tell which one it was. You'll know. 1,100 pounds more or less, the mare high steps a trot on a short circle, 2 feet of line from the hand of the tenement kid who never outgrew the wish to be able to do this, to the head of the horse who never watched TV, never saw The Lone Ranger or Hoppy, never read about Smokey or Flicka, Black Beauty or King of the Wind, and so cannot possibly know that the only thing the 2 of them need to perform this difficult, dangerous act together is love. The kind between cowgirl and pony, infused as the garden's knowing. To hell with experience, instruction, example, coin of the grown-up world. You don't really need what you don't really own. In her offhand, the stiff hose kinks, coiling underfoot as the mare circles, hating the green snake, the water that spurts, urging her faster, cross her at every turn, in the tight well of mud, in the slick-footing flood of the yard. It's a lot like washing a car, she quips, as a shod hoof flies out when the wet slaps horse privates. It's always like something else, this life for which squirting a half-ton of horse in hand on the strength of a 9-year-old's metaphysics is a figure for all the rest, for the morning-by-morning invention of a self in the laboratory of unmarked chemicals. Childhood is the barrel they give you to go over the falls in. Whatever you get to take with you in it can't be bigger or sharper than an idea. It must be that fall, clenched in a kid's fist, as earth expresses a diamond, that transforms it from simply some dumb thing to some dumb thing that is magic. The fifth essence, perhaps. What the alchemists knew lay latent in everything, even the least, even the most ridiculous. Yeah, I didn't have the money for lessons, so I bought the horse, you know. I mean, it was one or the other. It wasn't both. And she was perfect. I mean, if I wrote it up as a book, I would get sued by millions of parents because their kids would read it, and it really is a childhood. It's an impossible thing. It's impossible. I had her for 30 years. And this was a horse that was loaned to me to learn on. Famous, Shawnee James. My kids called him the Mother Bucker. Anyway, this poem is called Bucked. Balanced for that instant in midair, I watched his rump in white slow motion rise, heart cleft, perfect, to deliver the awesome blow. How beautiful the muscles of the world in their uses. Great limbs of trees, waves scaling seawalls, the moon's dreadful flecks on everything, heart valves and minute vessels, the spiraled cues for weakness that I pass on to my children. Of which might one ask to be spared? I'm going to read, I'm going to make a, okay. Oh, good. He's in here. He should be in here. No, he's elsewhere. Okay. You know, it's called what is it called? Adam, I think.
The poem is called
Yeah,
Adam.
Adam, yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm on the hunt.
Okay.
Even there, you know it's not there. Well, I'll have a
These,
look
see,
through
they hide under things. Is it in there?
It is.
Oh, can you come to my house one day?
Yeah, if you go to mine, I'll do yours. I always thought that was a good idea, you know, for women's equality, that if women just did each other's housework for them and paid each other what they actually was worth, you know, and then we had to, you know, have, you know, so you had to send in your, you know, timesheet, the whole thing, and then to the government and the whole 9 yards. We could bring it down, ladies and gentlemen. All we had to do was do each other's work for each other and pay what was a fair wage. Of course, it's still possible.
Get on it, Linda. Get on it.
Oh, yeah, I'll get on it. This is called Adam. When the farrier comes, and I mind the head of the mare as he works, lifting and angling her legs, rasping and cutting away at the splayed, ragged tissue, those dead arcs that fall, rank once off her body. We gossip, often back to back, as I keep her still, and he bends down deep to the ground. He forces his back, but her legs ache when they're forced, and he knows it. She's old, and he knows it, and he's young. He thinks he has so many years left in him, he can work like this forever, 10, 12 hours a day. He's a blackened man by noontime. His truck is rusting. His tires bald fast, going so far over these roads. We talk. I crank my head around. We gripe about the price of stuff. Fees and wages, horses badly kept, the troopers here who search the woods for 2 cons without getting out of their cruisers. But about work, we don't complain. I watch him every minute trying to get at what it is in his precision that moves me. His back must ache like a horse's. He sweats, and the flies I drive from the mare light on him. It's something more than that he puts the shoes on right. They never fall off. He won't do half-assed work. And he knows the old mare's legs need a little tilt less than some others. Bending, lifting, in his steel-toed boots and leather apron, he is a man making a living by the sweat of his brow, as if that sweat, that brow with its skyless, intimate vision of earth, that burned pair of shoulders bowed to the feet of an animal, found living a gift. Thank you. It's so moving. I really just, it's so, anyway. Did I read? Oh, I did. I know time is not my side. Okay. I think I'll switch around a little here and I'll go to a poem called Good Night, Irene, because I am going to make my way to some poems that go to Ireland. And this poem is kind of an introduction. It's in this book. It's in your book. I spent all morning trying to do this, and in the end I decided it was wrong, and I should do it a different way. And so you have a little breather in between poems. Okay, this is called Good Night, Irene. Whose wake was it, whose wedding, that ended with all of them singing it in the kitchen, that thicket of ankles and shins through which I threaded my way, cuffed gabardines and brogues, silk hose with the seams exhausted, the many aunts, Minnie Mouse pumps. Across the wet floor of the room, a human supersaturated solution of rye, to the Dutch door of the pantry that served as the bar. I rang like a clapper in the bell of their singing, saw their voices shimmer together in the well of smoke that was air. Now I remember the casket framed by the drapes of the parlor window, that room I was too young to enter, and remember Aunt Peg and Jim and Chris, Chet and the rest of them shit-faced to a man, propped vertical and rocking with the I'll see you in my dreams. Deep in my animal heart, I took that smell in as a blessing, that thick smoke of voices as the song. From behind the shelved half door that held the bottles, the butts, and the feather boas, somebody lifted me up to see them as who I was. And I loved them and hollered the song, breathing the air of happiness. Mm-hmm. I think I'll go to this third book. Kathy is, I sort of like little vigil lights to Kathy's picture because she's so productive in her poetry. She's put no, she is, and she's
every 10 years.
Well, and then she's done these wonderful anthologies of other people's poems, and she's an active and excellent teacher who goes around to different groups. I think she's astonishing, and she's a great asset to contemporary poets and poetry. Way beyond me.
Never.
Now, what am I an asset? I mean, I write poems that swear. So, anyway, now you turned my piece of paper over around it.
Now I'm not brilliant anymore. Troublemaker.
Okay. This, I wrote some of these. I was in Ireland. I've been to Ireland a few times, and I never really did Ireland, go all over. I wanted to go to the East Coast, the rural part of Ireland, and I had a couple of things I wanted to do, ignorant. I mean, I knew about the Troubles, believe me. And my family was up on County Down, and I wanted to go see someone, that's my grandparents were married there. And I didn't dare to go a couple of times. I started to go. And the third time I went with a member of the Arts Council from the Republic, and she drove me, and she had business up there, so she was, so I didn't have to go through the security of the border, which was really quite something. But I didn't know whether to be crossing myself or, saying the Protestant version of the Our Father, or what I should be doing. Okay, I have in off the cliffs of Moher. I should have a poem. I don't like this poem that much. I'm going to skip it. I'm going to read a poem called Stone Quarry. Late capitalism comes to the remote west coast of Ireland. From here, stones were drawn for the ruin in the distance, stones for walls fallen and falling, for cottages empty and roofless along this road, for fences holding the gate to the lane. Cattle and sheep graze its brink as they graze the centuries gutted. But now comes by night who used to steal slate, the man in new guise. Dead cars and garbage, what costs to dispose of, are what he brings back here. Signs of abundance, the colorful tumble of rubbish down scree of black gray. Will earth here, as sea has, as history has, develop a taste for, develop a stomach to take it and eat it, digesting even its name? The word capitalism is what I was thinking. People say, at least at the time I was writing this. This is, of course, eons have passed since I was writing these poems. This is called Local, and actually it's Gus O'Connor's pub in Doolin, County Clare. I know, well, it's become, I made it before it became famous. I actually did. It was wonderful. And I went there alone. And I was sober by the time I went there, which I never thought it would be possible to go to Ireland and stay sober, but I did. Anyway, in an Irish pub, Vatican of stout and fags, I travel back a family generation to the land of an honest man's failing. With such no other island is so richly endowed. I myself was many years inclined to honesty, but now deceive myself perhaps and others, having come a decade more ago to the crossroad where the pure refusal of a drunk's grave meets the compromise of walking the crooked lane conscious. I cannot bear to watch the man who so delights them in a parody of dance, but watch them watch him with smiles that shine, communal and benign, whose brother, just months past, himself was swept like an ill-advised explorer in the ocean caves below this Fisher Street bar. Away, and the gay and honest waves of drink turned savage in the inner world, turned toothed and clawed in the changeless village tide that always turns. I wanted to go see the summer castle of Grace O'Malley, the last pirate of on the west coast of Ireland, on Clare Island. And I also went to see Bridget's Well, and got out of Connemara Mare and rode on the water. I mean, not on the water, on the sand, on the beach. And Clare, I thought there was a ferry or something, and there would be a schedule, and I would buy it. It was like you wait at the side of the road, and sooner or later the mailboat comes. And sooner or later you get on, and sometimes you get over there, and sometimes you get back, and some days you don't at all. But, anyway, I shared the boat with a beautiful young woman who was just out of nursing school, and she had been assigned for her duty was to go to Clare Island and be the nurse on Clare Island, which had about 300 people, most of them my age or older, and they were all biddies who were watching because there was a new priest, Father Peter, on the island, and he was a beautiful black Irish man, and they lived in the parish hall was right next door to the clinic that she had to live in, so they were and besides which, she loved somebody else. And that's what this poem is about. In Clare, Michael was who she loved and was not loved by, though she was lovely as a silken thing, blue-eyed and good. In the stern of the mailboat, with loaves of store-bought bread, she sat, and the wind wrapped her face in her yellow hair. Every door to her soul was open. The boat carried her out from him and away. Ahead lay the island in rain. Her eyes traveled inward, deep, as outward opened the bay. And those are my Irish poems. I don't know what time is it here. Must be getting time to feed people. Yeah, we're getting close. I would like to read a poem, one poem. I'm not completely. Okay. This is a poem that's found homes for itself in many places. It's called Green. It's about the draft. It's about young men. It's about young men's. They're still in their stages of adult development when they're sent to war, and so it's called Green. Barely done with growing, but enough done for use, big and brand new to themselves, and to us, fresh minted, the bodies of boys on the last lapse toward manhood, by which we mean humanness, are harvested. Shocks of them are bound and sent, still green, to ripen in the shipping like tropical produce. They have achieved size. They have produced mass, arms and legs, the back's long muscles, unlined, quick, strong hands. It is as though we do not know that they are boys still, that they have souls, still boys, to which the dander of the world clings, benign or malignant, irritant or balm, to the willow-green nap of the soul. Barely have they stopped being measured against the doorframe, bringing the pencil and tape to another and pressing hard against the jam up toward adulthood. It is as though we do not know they are our sons and do not know they are not done yet. It is as though we did not see them stand like that, so hard trying not to cheat, to keep the heels flat and the head level, and yet to have grown another inch. It is as though we do not know that they don't know they are not done yet. They are so big they think so, yet we know they are not done, and so will go when we send them, bound in shocks like brothers, to ripen or to rot with their mother's blessings. I think that's fine. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, I think it's just about, I think it's just, yes. It's there, yeah. We did it. We did 7:30 to 8:35, I think. We did it.
Great.
You nailed it.
We nailed it. Yes,
Fantastic.
I love reading. We all love reading our poems, other people's poems, even with this as a voice. It's just, it's the density of the it's the density and physicality of the language that is so wonderful. So what do we do now? We have a little party, or we answer questions, or
I don't think
dance
we
an
have
Irish
any
jig?
definitive plans. Any questions? Would you like to eat snacks? Would you like to drink wine? What's wrong with that?
that sounds good. That sounds.
Or out into the soft
Oh,
June air?
in-
Oh, yes,
in
we
the
can go
so-
outside. We have a
That
little
would be so nice.
patio. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I wore this hat in tribute to Vincent, whom I met when I was a kid, sitting on Kings Beach in Lynn. I just thought he was a funny man with a hat. And then
You were
later,
right.
yeah, and I was right. But later I got to know about him, and I'm a big fan of Vincent, and I have many of his books, some signed by him. He came to Lynn to hear me read when I came from Alaska to read in Lynn for Poetry Month many years ago, and he came to a reading and introduced himself. So yes, I'm very happy to be in his house and to think of him working in this house.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.